Hey you, welcome back to my kitchen. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a vegan turkey alternative that is both soy and gluten-free. And not only that, I'm going to show you how to make a glaze and a gravy to go with it. And that starts now. Jumping right into the recipe, this one has a lot of detail. I would highly suggest watching this video and reading the recipe all the way through before you try to attempt it. You can find the full written version via the link in the description. Starting off, you will need to make a spice blend by mixing together the following: 1 1/2 teaspoon of ground sage, 1 1/2 teaspoon of thyme leaves, 1/2 teaspoon of celery seeds, 1/2 teaspoon of ground allspice, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Separate 1 tablespoon for the recipe and save the rest for later use in your cooking. You can also replace this with a poultry seasoning. Just be sure that it is gluten-free and vegan. Next, let's make the glaze for our loaf. In a small saucepot over medium heat, whisk together 1/2 cup of vegetable broth, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 1/2 tablespoon of red wine vinegar. Stirring, bring the mixture to a simmer. Continue to stir and allow to cook for 2 to 3 minutes. The glaze is ready once it begins to thicken slightly. Remove from heat and set aside. The glaze will thicken more as it rests. You also need a grain of choice prepared ahead of time. I used wild rice with some dried cranberries folded in. Since the recipe only calls for 2 tablespoons, I made a large batch ahead of time so I had grains for the whole week. Moving on to making our loaf. Prepare a steaming method of choice. For me, this will be my rice cooker. Using a food processor or a fork, process or mash 1/4 cup of Great Northern beans until a paste is formed. Some chunks are okay. Moving to a large bowl, add in mashed beans, 1/3 cup of gluten-free oats, 2 tablespoons of grated carrot, and 1 tablespoon of freshly minced parsley. Mix well to combine and then set aside. In a separate small mixing bowl, whisk together this dry mixture: 1/2 cup of rice flour, 1/4 cup of cornmeal, 2 tablespoons of arrowroot, and 2 tablespoons of xanthan gum. Set aside. In a third separate mixing bowl, whisk together this wet mixture: 1/3 cup of vegetable stock, 3 tablespoons oil of choice, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons of flaxseed meal, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1 tablespoon of the seasoning we made earlier or a poultry seasoning, and 1 tablespoon of vegan chicken flavor. Set aside. Have all 3 of these bowls somewhat close when we move to the stovetop. Next, prepare a 5 3/4 inch by 3 1/4 inch mini bread loaf pan. Place a few drops of oil onto the center of a piece of parchment paper. Using your fingertips, lightly grease the paper as much as you can. Line the bread pan with the parchment paper, being careful so it does not rip. Moving to the stovetop, add 1 finely shredded shallot and 2 cloves of finely shredded garlic to a small saucepot. Place over low heat. Heat shallot and garlic, stirring until fragrant. Add in 1/2 cup of Great Northern bean aquafaba, the liquid from inside the canned beans, and mix, making sure to scrape any shallot or garlic that's stuck to the bottom of the pot. The next steps happen rather quickly, so be sure to read ahead and watch this entire video. Bring aquafaba to a simmer. Add in 1 1/2 teaspoon of agar, and whisk vigorously until dissolved. Keeping the heat on, continue to whisk. Stir in the wet mixture that we made earlier. Increase the heat to medium. Heat the mixture until it is boiling. Allow to cook bubbling for 30 to 45 seconds, continuing to stir. Pour the hot mixture over the oat mixture that we prepared first. Fold the hot mixture into the oats with a rubber spatula. Begin folding in the dry mixture that we made, a small amount at a time. Once all the dry mixture is added and the dough is cool enough to touch, knead the dough with your hands. The mixture should still be somewhat hot. If the dough is too sticky, knead in a bit more rice flour. It should be slightly sticky but easy to handle. Divide the dough in half and press it into our prepared bread pan. Create a cavity in the center and fill with 2 tablespoons of a grain cranberry mixture. Press the other half into the dough in an even layer over the top. Press well to compact and seal the loaf. Lightly and carefully lift the edges of the parchment and pull the loaf out slightly to release any folds that made their way into the loaf. Fold the top of the parchment over the loaf and press down. Place in a steamer basket upside down and steam for 35 minutes. While the loaf steams, it's time to make our gravy. Whisk together 2 cups vegetable stock, 1 1/2 tablespoon of arrowroot, and 1 teaspoon of vegan chicken flavor. Place in a small saucepot over medium heat. Stirring, bring this mixture to a boil. Reduce to a simmer and continue to stir. Gravy is ready once it has thickened, about 3 to 5 minutes. Season with salt and pepper to taste. After 35 minutes, carefully remove the loaf pan from the steamer. Carefully peel away the parchment paper, opening the top. Carefully remove the bread pan from the turkey loaf. Flip the mini loaf over onto the center of a baking sheet. Peel away the parchment, being careful not to leave any behind. Coat the loaf in glaze and then place under a broiler to brown. Or, if you're strange like me and own a blowtorch, brulee the top of your loaf. Once brown, coat with glaze again, and then garnish with fresh parsley. Allow this to rest for 5 more minutes. Slice and serve with gravy and sides of your choice. Your vegan, gluten and soy-free meal is ready. This recipe is part of a trio of videos dedicated to those with diet restrictions or allergies that were looking for an option during the holiday seasons. Check out my low-carb harvest mash recipe, as well as my green bean casserole recipe. Those will be up in the screen or down in the description for you. If you're new to my channel, my name is Eric. I'm a certified culinarian and I make nerdy vegetarian lifestyle content, as well as vegan and gluten-free recipes. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on a future recipe. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.